Yo, 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 it's Mr. K back with another read along. Okay, this time it's going to be an introduction to the Protestant Reformation. All right, so we're going to read through. I'll kind of underline and highlight some important things, and hopefully it'll help you answer some of these questions. So, first thing, we have an engraving right here. We talked about engravings last week. So we remember what those are during the Renaissance with the different types of art. Okay. So let's read about the Protestant Reformation. Today, there are many types of Protestant churches. For example, Baptist is currently the largest denomination in the United States, but there are many dozens more. How did this happen, and where did they all begin? To understand the Protestant Reform movement, we need to go back in history to the early 16th century, where there was only one church in Western Europe, what we would now call the Roman Catholic Church. Under the leadership of the Pope in Rome, today we call this the Roman Catholic because there are so many other types of churches. For example, Methodist, Baptist, Lutheran, Calvinist, and Anglican. You get the idea. So the only main thing we got to take out of this is that the Pope was the leader of the Roman Catholic Church. Okay, and the Roman Catholic Church had a lot of power at the time. So that's the big thing. Church in the states. Those are the kind of comparing the church and the government at the time. So if we go back to the year 1500, the church, what we now call the Roman Catholic Church, was very powerful, both politically and spiritually in Western Europe, and in fact ruled over a significant territory in Italy called the Papal States. But there were other political forces at work too. There was the Holy Roman Empire, largely made up of German-speaking regions ruled by princes, dukes, and electors, the Italian city-states, England, as well as the increasingly unified states of France and Spain, among others. The power of the rulers in these areas had increased in the previous century, and many were anxious to take the opportunity offered by the Reformation to weaken the power of the papacy, and which is the office of the Pope, and increase their own power in relation to the Church in the Church of Rome and the other rulers. So this is kind of an important spot here. I'm just going to kind of box it in. That's basically saying these rulers that weren't necessarily with the church were kind of like, we're sick of the Pope telling us what to do. We're ruling our own areas. So maybe this Reformation is kind of cool because we can, we can kind of have some power where the Pope can just kind of stay in charge of the church and not politics. Keep in mind, too, that for some of the time, the church had been seen as an institution plagued by internal power struggle. At one point in the late 1300s and 1400s, the church was ruled by 3 popes simultaneously. Popes and cardinals often lived like kings, that's important, more than spiritual leaders, because that shows the power they had. Popes claim temporal or political as well as spiritual power. So they had political and spiritual power. They commanded armies, made political alliances and enemies, and sometimes even engaged in war. So this is a lot of things that they did that really don't have to do with the church. It just has to do with like actual politics. I mean, the president does all that stuff that we do today. Simony, the selling of church offices, and nepotism, favoritism based on family relationships were rampant. So basically they put people they knew in charge. Clearly, if the Pope was concentrating on these worldly issues, there wasn't much time left for the caring souls of the faithful. The corruption of the church was well known, and several attempts had been made to reform the church, notably by John Wycliffe and Jan Hus. But none of these efforts successfully challenged the church practice until Martin Luther's actions in the early 1500s.